you can have the best of both worlds. You don't have to pause your income earning abilities and your career just because you want to go and experience things outside the mundane 9 to 5 routine rat race that you might be stuck in.
It's unlikely that you'll be able to turn around to your 9 to 5 job and say, right, I want to go to Thailand for a month and I'll carry on working from there. It's unlikely, firstly, that you're able to be that free where you can only work from a laptop. And then secondly, it's unlikely that your management, your manager, your boss is going to let you work from thousands of miles away.
We ended up living in a place that you could only dream of living in the UK, where it was like a penthouse apartment with infinity pool and an ultra-fast Wi-Fi.
You wanted to change from Chiang Mai to Da Nang the next week and you could just have the same lifestyle. There's no effect on your income from doing that.
You've got people who are like founders or CEOs or entrepreneurs or whatever you call them, the people that actually run their own business. And these were the people that I noticed who'd built businesses that run independently of where they were or what they were doing. Now, this was the level of freedom that I wanted. Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast, your key to unlocking the secrets of high-ticket dropshipping. I'm Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. So if you're ready to learn how to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business, pick up a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, whether you're looking to replace your income or launch a side hustle. I wrote this book as a roadmap to help you launch a low-maintenance, high-profit e-commerce business that gives you the freedom to spend more time with your family, travel the world, and work on your own terms. Ready to join us? Visit htabook.com to get your copy today. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. My name's James Eardley and I'm joined again today by serial entrepreneur and founder of Dropship Unlocked, Lewis Smith. So today is an exciting topic. I know we both love speaking about this subject, Lewis. We're going to be talking about the concept of being a digital nomad and how you can make money from anywhere in the world. So I'm certainly excited about talking about this one. Lewis, are you looking forward to talking about this one?
Thanks, James. Yes, I absolutely am. Yeah, this is a great topic to discuss. It's something that I'm very passionate about personally, having been through the process of becoming a digital nomad. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing not only the tactical advice that we do through this podcast about how to grow an e-commerce business, but I think it's important that we also talk about what it's all for in the end. You know, why create an e-commerce business? One of the huge advantages of it for a lot of people is that freedom to be able to travel and work from anywhere in the world. It doesn't mean that that has to be your only reason, but it's the autonomy and the control that it gives you to be able to say, right, tomorrow I'm booking a flight to the other side of the world to some exotic location. I'm packing my laptop and I'm going to run my business from there. That level of freedom in this day and age is incredible. So if you can create something that allows you to live life on your own terms in that way, it's amazing. So for anyone that hasn't heard the term digital nomad, it refers to people who work remotely and leverage technology to perform their job. So being a digital nomad allows you to travel the world without having to sacrifice your income. So personally, it's given me the opportunity to not only embrace the lifestyle of being able to travel and experience new and diverse places and cultures and incredible foods and experiences, but do so without having to put my life and my career on hold whilst I did it. This concept of I'm going to go and take a gap year where like everything has to remain stagnant and I can't earn any income while I'm there, so I have to just rely on savings. I always felt that was probably the only way. I didn't really know of an alternative until I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which I think opened my eyes to someone who's very ambitious like me doesn't have to, you can have the best of both worlds. You don't have to pause your income earning abilities and your career just because you want to go and experience things outside the mundane 9 to 5 routine rat race that you might be stuck in. So it was an incredible eye-opening experience for me and it was a real journey. So today's episode will go through how I made that transition. But yeah, I lived in some really cool places that we'll talk about. So Chiang Mai being the hub of digital nomads in Southeast Asia for its really low cost of living and amazingly fast and stable internet as well. And obviously incredible weather. Just this awesome city in the jungle in the north of Thailand that's kind of in this valley and it's just so green and you can go hiking up mountains and There's elephants and there's incredible waterfalls. It's just such a nice, friendly community of obviously the amazing friendly locals, but also the types of people that migrate there, especially the digital nomads, are just so giving and such a nice community to be a part of. So yeah, I'd really say that if you are going to make the transition, Chiang Mai is a great place to start.
There's certainly a big wide world out there and so much to see instead of being stuck in one place where you grew up your whole life. So it's really good to hear about where you've lived, Lewis. I'm keen to actually dive into that a little bit more. Other than Chiang Mai, where else have you sort of experienced and lived and worked abroad?
Yeah, so my wife Becky and I, when we moved out to Thailand initially, we kind of used that, and I'll explain a bit more in this episode about kind of how we built up to making that jump, because I know we've just kind of jumped in at the deep end here. But so we used Chiang Mai in Thailand as our base, but we did travel to other places as well. So we spent time living in a city called Da Nang in Vietnam, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's this incredible coastal city in Vietnam. It's almost like the future Miami of Vietnam. It would be how I describe it, because there's all these kind of amazing skyscrapers and hotels going up with neon lights on the beach and amazing white sand beaches that stretch for miles. Loads of digital nomads there, again, super fast internet, so many reasons to go and explore other places like that. Other than that, the one that I'm sure lots of people are familiar with, the island of Bali in Indonesia, that was an incredible place. So living in Seminyak or Ubud or Canggu, so many cool places to see and travel, even just within Bali. I think some of the benefits of Bali are there are some incredible restaurants, amazing food, great surfing, great coffee culture, lots of digital nomads there. It's a little bit more touristy than Chiang Mai in terms of you'll get a lot of people traveling there. It's quite near to Australia, so I think Australians will tend to just go there for a short holiday. So you do get that kind of mix of both types of people there. But I think overall it's a great friendly culture and a really good place to live. And I know that there's certain people in our community inside Dropship Unlocked that actually live there as well. So running their location independent business from there as well. So the other ones that spring to mind are that I've personally been to, and there's many more. You can go to, I think it's Nomad List is a popular website that kind of ranks all the cities in the world by the different digital nomad criteria, like fast internet, safety, weather, air quality, all these things. So worth checking out Nomad List if you haven't already. Playa del Carmen in Mexico was a great place for digital nomads as well. That was a real fun, bustling coastal city. I quite like coastal cities because you can I go for morning runs on the beach, and it's just something nice about being by the water. So that had a big nomad community, lots of great meetups. We used to meet at these rooftop bars on the seafront overlooking the water and kind of have networking drinks and things like that. Get lots of Americans there because it's obviously easy access from the US as well. So lots of US nomads. And then, the complete other end of the spectrum as well that we've done in more recent times would be somewhere like Dubai. So Dubai being a completely different experience to all of the above. Much more developed, still amazing weather, but just a lot more infrastructure, and definitely not a cheap place to go if you're looking for to extend your runway as a nomad and try and make your money go as far as it can. I wouldn't go to Dubai for that reason. But once you're more established and you have some money that you can go and spend on enjoying experiences, then Dubai offers some incredible things as well. So a great spot if you are looking to travel, especially with a family as well. Very safe place.
Brilliant. I mean, you've got lots of experience of traveling to different corners of the world and getting different experiences while living and working from each. The majority on that list initially were sort of quite low cost areas to move to as well. So you probably actually went down in terms of your living costs, despite being able to continue growing your business and stay at the same income level. Very excited to hear about all the different types of places you've been to and traveled to. So the freedom clearly from this type of work that you are doing is unmatched from your traditional 9-to-5 job. It's unlikely that you'll be able to turn around to your 9-to-5 job and say, right, I want to go to Thailand for a month and I'll carry on working from there. It's unlikely, firstly, that you're able to be that free where you can only work from a laptop. And then secondly, it's unlikely that your management, your manager, your boss is going to let you work from thousands of miles away. So clearly, if you want to be the type of person that can work from anywhere, there's a little bit of a disconnect from where you are now to where you need to get to be able to start living and working abroad. So that's what we're going to talk about today, about how can you actually do that. So I know the type of work you were doing to enable that move abroad was running a dropshipping business, high-ticket dropshipping business. So how does dropshipping facilitate this digital nomad lifestyle?
Yeah, so I can talk a bit more about the specifics of dropshipping, but just want to pick up on an interesting point you made there about bosses maybe not being open to you wanting to travel and work from the other side of the world whilst in a job. So when Becky and I made this move, which was about 2017, I think, to end of 2017, it was quite unusual. It was very unusual, right? It wasn't really something that many people had heard of. When we got there, obviously, there's a huge nomad community. So amongst the digital nomad scene, it was old news. It's something that people have done for years. But amongst our friends, family, no one had really heard of it. No one knew what that term meant. And it wasn't until the events of 2020 unfolded and everyone was forced to work from home that a lot of employers became a lot more open to the concept of remote work. And it kind of forced people into the world of Zoom meetings and working remotely. So I think people now, we've come out the other side of that, but people now are a little bit, I think there are different levels of freedom. And I just wanted to dive into that because I think that you can almost be tricked into thinking that you have control and autonomy over your life just because you have location freedom. And let me just dive into that quickly to explain what I mean by that. So employees who work in a job, but who are allowed to do so remotely, I mean, that's just your boss being flexible on where you're allowed to work from. And since 2020, I think we've seen a real rise in employer flexibility around that, right? Because people just realize, oh, you can just work from anywhere. But I can't help but feel that you'd still lack the autonomy. And I know that you would, because I had that situation. My employer was very flexible on where the work happened from. I could work remotely at the time. But I always think, well, ask yourself, if you feel like you think you already have the best setup and you have a job already that allows you to work remotely, could you just take 6 weeks off and shut your laptop and would you still earn an income? Because it's not always just about being able to work remotely. It's about not having to live your life based on someone else's demands, right? So I think that if you couldn't close your laptop for 6 weeks and not do anything and the whole thing would, and your income would dry up, then you're always going to have that desire for more autonomy if you're anything like me. Then you've got freelancers. So we met a lot of people who were in this position whilst traveling and meeting other digital nomads. And so those would be people like web designers or people doing jobs like web development or writers or social media managers or, people who are doing paid work, either independently or kind of subcontracted through a company, who have probably the next level of freedom whereby they don't have a specific boss that they're answering to. But again, their income is still linked to their time, right? But then I noticed as I met all of these different people and I was kind of thinking, okay, well, that's great. They're freelancing and working remotely. So they have a higher level of freedom than the employees do, who have to log in at a certain time and, still report to a boss and, they could be let go at any moment. And then you've got people who are like founders or CEOs or entrepreneurs or whatever you call them, the people that actually run their own business. And these were the people that I noticed who'd built businesses that run independently of where they were or what they were doing. Now, this was the level of freedom that I wanted. I realized that this was the type of entrepreneur I wanted to be because I wanted ability to say, not that I probably would because I enjoy the work that I do, but if I wanted to shut my laptop for 6 weeks, I would know that my family's income wouldn't just dry up because the systems that I'd built would continue to run in my absence. And so dropshipping is a brilliant e-commerce model for digital nomads because it doesn't require physical inventory. So you don't need to order stock, you don't need to hold stock, you don't need to put capital aside or have a physical premises. You can run the whole thing from your laptop, coordinating between your team, who can also be based remotely anywhere in the world, and your suppliers, who are usually based in the country where you're primarily selling to, if you're using the model that we both use and now teach, which is the home turf advantage model.
And that's the same model that I use, is the home turf advantage high ticket dropshipping model. And the freedom it's allowed me now compared to when I was an employee is just unmatched. And I think a lot of people, when they will click onto this episode, they'll have this desire that they want to be able to work from anywhere in the world. And you're going through those options that people have. Clearly, the right way to set your goal is to be in a position where not only can you work from anywhere, but you can also work from anywhere from however long you want to work. And also you can start and finish work whenever you want as well. And the way to do that ultimately is to have control over that income stream. And that's to run your own business. And that's why I've got into the home turf advantage business model as well.
Yeah, exactly. As I say, there are different levels of freedom, aren't there? And people would sometimes say, oh, no, I'm completely remote. We hear it sometimes when people are considering starting a business and then they say, oh, no, but I'm already remote. My boss lets me work from anywhere. It's totally fine. And I think, but I remember what it's like. And there's kind of this it's difficult to describe. There's almost like a dark cloud of a sense of like someone watching you. Even if your boss is really understanding, you can't help but feel that, if you're on the other side of the world and maybe you're not logged in at 2 p.m. in the afternoon because you're by the pool and you want to enjoy your time in the environment you're in, you can't help but feel this slight sense of guilt this nagging feeling of like, should I be doing more work because I'm technically on the clock, but I know that my hours are flexible. So am I like, there's this feeling that you can't shake. And someone said to me before I started my first e-commerce business, because I was talking to them about the concept of doing it, and they said that they were an entrepreneur, and they said, you will experience such a freedom of headspace when you decide to leave your current job and start your own. It's unmatched. But currently what you're doing is you're dealing with being an employee and trying to build something else at the same time. It's like there's so many plates spinning in your mind. No wonder you're stressed. So they said, honestly, once you relinquish one thing, you will free up so much headspace. And that is so true. Now I look back and realize what they meant. So I don't know if you've experienced that same feeling as well, James.
100%. I can completely resonate with that nagging sense of guilt. You know, when I was a 9-to-5 employee, even taking my dog out for a walk at lunchtime, although I knew it was lunch and no one was expecting me to be available, by going 20 minutes around the block, I still felt like I needed to quickly check my notifications from the team in case there was something looming for me when I got back to my desk. And then the moment I was able to leave my job and just run my business as my primary source of income, that first Monday morning when I could sit back and relax and know that there was nobody looking over my shoulder, that freedom is what I started it for in the first place. And there'll be a lot of people that are trying to get to that level of freedom as well and want to have that freedom, autonomy, and work from anywhere in the world. So let's dig into your story a bit more as well. So how did you actually go about building a location-independent business?
Yeah, well, there is a specific step-by-step model that we now use and teach, which is the home turf advantage model. Now, you might be thinking, doesn't the home turf advantage mean you have to live on your home turf, i.e. in the UK, if that's where you're based and where you grew up? No, it doesn't. What it means is that the suppliers that you end up working with for your e-commerce business should ideally have stock already in the same country as where the majority of your buyers, your customers live, so that nothing has to cross borders and that you get fast next day delivery to your customers. So we'll dive into that. But crucially, I think the first thing that I needed to determine when deciding to build an online business was that I needed my team to be able to complete the day-to-day tasks on the business model, whatever that were to be, leaving me with complete control over my time. I didn't want to build another job. We talked about that feeling of, worrying that someone's looking over your shoulder. Should you be working all hours of the day? I didn't want that feeling. I wanted to know that regardless of whether I am at work or decide to take a day off, the whole thing continues independently of me. The next step would then be to just choose a business model that is inherently location independent. So one that doesn't require you to order a container worth of stock and go and inspect all of the items and then drive them into Amazon, or organize stuff on the ground, or have a warehouse where stuff has to go out of, where you have to physically be on the ground or have someone there. I wanted something that was totally online, that I could run from a laptop, that I could kind of get my head around, that wasn't too convoluted when I started. And so I wanted it to be long-term and sustainable as well. So in my case, I wanted something where I could learn to automate and delegate a lot of the tasks that were required to keep the business running long-term, so that I would be comfortable working on different time zones and knowing that my business continued to run whilst I was asleep. And it was quite good actually being on a different time zone when I first arrived in Thailand, because I would work from maybe 8 till 12, 8 a.m. till midday. And during that time, no one in the UK is really awake. And so I had to learn to batch and automate and build processes and figure out what was going to break in that afternoon whilst the UK woke up and I was asleep, or that evening whilst I was asleep, so that the next day I could look at the business and figure out what broke yesterday, why did it break, what could I have done to fix it. And I don't mean break horrifically, but like what went wrong, what customers got upset about certain things, not the information not passing to them correctly, and what could I do to ensure that it didn't happen the next time.
Yeah, a bit of a hack there, actually working away from the hours that everyone else is working in the UK. You can't then be disturbed or distracted by an instant message that comes up through a live chat from a customer or from a supplier getting back to you on a certain email. Had to get really good at outsourcing and automating the business so that it can run when you're doing whatever you want on the other side of the world. So choosing a model from the first instant that enables you to do that is completely location independent, is clearly the first step for anyone that's thinking about running a business from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good hack actually, and something that once you are then on the same time zone as your customers again, you have to exert quite a lot of willpower to not dive into the inbox and be reactive to all of the things coming in. So actually use the feature inside Gmail now, which I think is a native feature now, where you can just pause the inbox. You just pause it and you say, I don't want any more inputs coming in right now. I'm working on what we have. and you deal with the things that you have. And obviously, once you have a customer support team in place, you're not the one in the inbox anymore, which is even more liberating. But it's just building up those processes. I think as well, when you first make that transition into online business and you start a e-commerce business using the home turf advantage model, as you start to make profit, if you do live somewhere like Chiang Mai, for example, or somewhere like Bali, where the cost of living is significantly lower than it is in the US and the UK, then it's important, in my opinion, to build up a cash buffer, because there will be some level of uncertainty or instability or something in those early stages that you don't want to be too exposed or vulnerable to. So I always say, if you can build up a cash buffer, don't reinvest all of your profits straight away, set some aside. You never know what's around the corner. So I like to have at least 6 months of operating cash liquid, ready to go, just in case, in a just in case account. That might be more than some people would require. That might be a lot less than some people would be comfortable with. For me, that's kind of just the rule of thumb that I tend to stick to, because I know that if something drastic happened, I'd have 6 months of costs covered to fix it, at which point I back myself to figure something out within 6 months. If I can't do that, then I'm probably not cut out to be an entrepreneur. So that's why I picked dropshipping, high ticket dropshipping, and eventually the home turf advantage model, just because it ticked a lot of those boxes and really is an incredibly liberating business model. And once you get it up and running, it's semi-passive. You can shut your laptop and the sales will continue to come in. And once you have a team there to facilitate it, you really can be quite hands-off.
It's an amazing lifestyle once you've got it all set up. But although the world is a very different place since 2020, to turn around and say, look, I'm going to go and live now in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand and run a business from there, it's still quite almost like an extreme viewpoint to take for some people. So when you decided that that's what you wanted to do with your life, you wanted to be a digital nomad, make money from anywhere in the world, how did you actually get things set up firstly in the UK so that you could do that? And then how did you tell your friends, your family, and your employers that this is the path that you were going to take?
Yeah, it was a really exciting, probably like 4 or 5 month period from when we decided we were going to do it through to getting to the point where we actually got on that flight. So my wife, Becky, and I mean, we even brought our wedding forwards because we wanted to get this plan underway. So we were going to get married, I think, later the following year. And we decided to bring the wedding forward so that we could get things moving, get this show on the road. I'm a researcher, so I went down hours of YouTube rabbit holes looking up the best places to live and figuring out, like, that Nomad List website, figuring out what were the best cities, what offered the mix of different things that would suit us best, figuring out, and obviously the decision I came to was Chiang Mai was a great base, a great hub, great place to start. But even looking at things like what were the best co-working spaces there, what were the best areas to live in, what were the best types of jobs to be running whilst out there, what types of companies to be running whilst out there. So I think, in preparation for leaving from the UK, I mean, there was a whole list. I think there was like a Trello board list that someone had made that was like becoming a digital nomad list. And it told you all the things you needed to do. And there are things you wouldn't even think of, like setting up mail forwarding from your house to a virtual post box that would scan your mail and then email you through the scans of your mail so that you could see it whilst you were abroad. We had to figure out had to get everything out of our flat in London at the time. We auctioned all of our belongings that we just didn't want or need anymore off to friends and family. And we had this funny drunken auction with all of our friends at our flat for the evening. And we ordered 10 Domino's pizzas and then just auctioned off the clock on the wall and the Hoover and the TV and the soundbar and all this stuff. It was quite funny. And then, they were kind of asking, what are you actually doing though? Are you working out there? Is this a gap year? Are you just going to and people couldn't get their head around it. And I was saying, well, no, I've started an e-commerce business. It's already up and running. I've already replaced my income with it. And now I want to go and travel and so that we can live and experience other cultures whilst still doing it. So no, I'm not putting my career on hold. This isn't some midlife crisis that I've decided to just drop everything and go traveling. But I think people felt that because it was unprecedented in their eyes, obviously it wasn't because we weren't the first people to ever do it. I'm under no illusion on that front. But because in our circles, they hadn't heard it before. It was such a foreign concept. And something that really brings this home is quite a funny story. So a friend of mine who I worked with at the company that I was at before, I sent out this email to lots of people on the last day of me leaving. And I was reading it the other day, actually. It was quite a nice email. I just said, thank you so much for the last 10 years, I think it was, working there. made some incredible friends. It's been an amazing place to work. It really was a great company, and I was very thankful for all the stuff I learned there. And I said, but the time's come. It's now or never. I have to do this, but I don't yet have children. I want to make the leap. I'm going to run a business. I'm going to move to Thailand and do it. And you could tell that some people had just skim read the email, because later a friend of mine that still worked at that company said to me that someone came up to him in the cafe and said, I hear Lewis has gone to start a yoga retreat in Thailand. Amazing. And it was like, the distortion of the message, since it had been passed around different people, completely misinterpreted what I was going to do. And I was like, well, yeah, if that's what they believe, then that's fine. But no, unfortunately, I didn't start a yoga studio. I was running an e-commerce business. But I think that it was almost like selective hearing, and people latched onto something that they could relate to. And they thought, well, I have heard someone who's done that before, so maybe that's what he's done. That must be it. They're like shoehorning your situation into someone else's. So that was quite an interesting one.
Brilliant. I think people often, perhaps if they don't understand what you're doing, they put a label on so they can understand it. It was the case for me as well, though. You mentioned that people were quite accepting of it, and actually they could realize why you wanted to do that. And it was the same for me. Even employees and managers of mine, when I left my job and explained that I'd replaced my income with an e-commerce store, they got it. It wasn't a case of having to explain why I would want to do that. They understood that I was able then to work on what I love working on from anywhere in the world, wherever I wanted to do that. So it was an easier transition than I thought. And I know that anyone thinking about it, when you first have this idea in your mind, you have a picture of how it will be. And I kept that front of mind, actually, how I would tell people that I was leaving. And that motivated me. And I always had it in my mind that people were going to be more surprised or more shocked than they actually turned out to be. But it was nice to have that in the back of my mind as a motivation for that day where I was able to leave. And it definitely lived up to expectations to be able to cut ties from a 9 to 5 and work from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it's incredible. Some people get it, some people don't, and it's just that's on them really, not on us, right? We're doing the thing, we're living our dreams, we're actually making that jump and doing the thing that we have always aspired to do. We had quite a quick turnaround time. I think we left our jobs, and I think within 2 weeks later, we were preparing to get on the flight to move out to Thailand. And that was a pretty scary day. So for anyone that's considering doing this, it's all fun and games in the build-up, but the moment you reach the airport terminal and you then get on the plane, it's a bit of a scary experience. I remember on the flight out there, I think I was okay because I'd done so much research. I think I effectively knew like a lot about the city, probably more about the city than a lot of people that even live there, because I was like fully ready. I knew all the right bars, the right restaurants, the right areas where we were going to go to the gym, like all this stuff I'd kind of figured out, made loads of notes on my phone. But Becky, I remember on the plane, halfway through, we were at like 30,000 feet, and she suddenly just turned to me, and you could tell she was having a bit of a wobble, and she was like, oh no, like, I don't know if we've done the right thing here. What have we done? We're like leaving our families. Is this the right move? Like, and you could tell that suddenly it had hit home, and I had to really question that as well. And I had to have that belief that powered us through and said, I promise it will be okay. We'll figure it out together. We're on this journey together. So I think going with a partner is another thing as well that can make it an even more enjoyable experience, because you get to share those experiences and build those memories together. But it was a nice feeling, because when we got off the plane, I remember when you turn your phone back on and it connects to the Thailand network and says like, welcome to Thailand. I got this flood of Shopify notifications came through, and it was all of the sales. And I just felt at that point, this is a sign, like something, because it'd been a night flight, I think. And throughout that night, we just had lots of sales coming in. And I just felt like, well, what's just come through on the phone there has paid for the flights, right? So, and then I think some friends of ours treated us to a really nice hotel. So like a 5-star hotel for the first few nights when we arrived. So it was like, you could get our bearings and find our feet and make sure that we settled in properly. So we arrived and we started looking around at some long-term rental apartments, and there were some incredible modern apartments. We ended up living in a place that you could only dream of living in the UK, where it was like penthouse apartment with infinity pool and ultra-fast Wi-Fi, sauna, fitness, amazing gym, surrounded by really cool coffee shops where lots of people were co-working in, and nice restaurants. So a really great place to live. And once we did settle, we were very settled and very happy there.
Yeah, might take a little bit of time to settle in, I suppose, but having that flood of Shopify notifications, have a really nice villa booked, do some nice activities for the first few days, that probably settles you in. It opens your eyes to the adventure that you're about to start. Clearly a very exciting time for you. I think what I'd like people to take away from this is that you initially made that decision. I'm going to do this. I'm going to work from anywhere. I'm going to be a digital nomad, and I'm going to be able to, generate as much income as I'm making now and more, but able to do it from anywhere in the world. And then all of the little details and the tactical stuff, that comes down the line. You work that out as you go. But initially, you just have to make that decision that that's the path that you're going to take, and you'll work out the rest as you go, as you did. Even if you have a few wobbles on the way, once you've made that decision, you had that conviction that it was the right thing for you, and that adventure you were going to go on was going to be amazing for your life, then you stuck with it. And I think people should hold on to that as well. So how can somebody that's thinking about this, obviously they need to ensure their business is able to run without them, because for one reason or another, they might not be able to be working, or they don't want to be tied to their laptop the whole time while they're traveling. So how can you make sure that your business is set up so that it doesn't require your immediate attention?
Yeah, so I think processes are everything when it comes to not wanting to have to get involved in the minutiae, the detail of the business. So I think having things like a project management tool like Asana, like Monday.com, whatever the system that you use is just making sure that you have clear processes in place that step-by-step guide a member of your team through how to deal with a certain problem, how to deal with a customer who hasn't received an item, how to deal with a customer who wants tracking details, how to deal with a certain product inquiry, how to deal with a refund request, all of those things. If you can have them systematized, you never need to then log in and be there, because somebody else can just log in and do it for you within your team. Then it comes down to actually having clear expectations with the team members as well. So making sure that if their responsibility is for phone support, that any missed calls that get missed, that they call them back the same day, or making sure that live chats, if that's their job on live chat on the website, is to get back to live chat requests within 2 minutes, say, for example. So it's just making sure that you remove the business's dependence on you as an individual to complete any one task. And as we said before, that different time zones can actually be a real advantage to that, because when you log in and you see this flood of stuff that happened yesterday, just think, why am I having to deal with this particular one email right now? What is it that's in my brain that means that only I can deal with this? And how can I make it so that someone else on the team has the power and the autonomy and the control to be able to do this without me being there? And it takes time. It takes building trust and putting systems in place. But you can create user accounts on different software for different team members, or use LastPass if you need to share passwords and things like that. And just making sure that you have those clear policies, expectations in place from the outset. And then you just make sure that you have a great team in place and hire people that you can trust and that you can unleash their potential and allow them to exceed your expectations.
It's certainly a new skill set. I think when you then have to hand over tasks, you delegate, and you have to take a step back and allow that the team member to get on with that work without you. If you've got no experience of management before, it's a completely new skill set to be able to hand tasks over and not feel like you have to oversee everything. That's the skill that you need to be able to have to get to the next level, because there's only so much input you can put in a day. We've all got the same amount of 24 hours, but clearly the people that are able to outsource and get to the next level are the people that have the most leverage, and they can pass on tasks to others. So if you get yourself really good at delegating tasks and making sure that the output can still be the same without you having to be tied to doing the work, that's how you can get to the next level. So a skill really to be cultivated to get to this next level in business. So you've talked about some of the advantages while you're working abroad, and actually having a different time zone turned out to be a real advantage to make sure that you were process driven from the start. But what are some of the challenges of working abroad? And I want to know a little bit about how you were able to manage those challenges.
Yeah, I think the first one that caught me off guard was the feeling of isolation, of being away from friends and family. Depending on who you are as a person, you might be really close to your family, you might not be so close. That I think is personality dependent. I didn't think it would affect me. And eventually, I did miss people from home. I did miss being close to the family. We managed to fly them out and share some of the experiences with them as well along the way. But there are parts of it where you think, it would be nice to just be around the corner, from the family. I think something that people think will be a massive issue, but sometimes, depending on where you set up, it actually isn't, is the access to a stable internet connection. So with things like mobile hotspots, what I typically do is if I land in a new destination, I'll go and buy a local SIM card, and then I'll just swap out my personal SIM card into the local one, keep the same number on WhatsApp and everything. And then you just get unlimited, get a very high data allowance package. And then wherever you are in that country, regardless of whether they have internet or not, usually they do in places like Chiang Mai, and usually it's faster than it is in the UK. But even if they didn't, you'd have a mobile hotspot right there, and you could just set it up next to your laptop and just begin working. So I think that's something that I wouldn't be so concerned about. finding good spaces to actually work and co-working spaces takes a bit of time when you get there. I remember sending a Black Friday, Cyber Monday email campaign from this like surfer cafe in Bali in Canggu, right on the coast. And like all the guys were going out for surfing in the morning and I was sitting there with a coffee and a croissant trying to like work on a Klaviyo email campaign, get it out. And it was like hours before anyone in the UK would even wake up. But just funny things like that you find yourself doing at 8 a.m. in a cafe with a croissant, that it's just it's a different way of working. You're front loading the work and you're building systems ahead of people even waking up in the UK if you're on that side of the world. So that's an interesting one. Yeah, I think just making sure that you manage that work-life balance, because yes, you've created this level of freedom and autonomy and ability to travel. But if you're like us and you love this type of work and you're really passionate about it, then it can become difficult to draw the line sometimes, and you can reach burnout, because if you're working in the same place that you live, if your home is your office, then sometimes you've got to establish a routine and set boundaries, because otherwise that you just work into the evening, and that's not healthy. You can't sustain that for a long time, and also that's not the reason you started your own business, is it? So that you could work late into the evening like maybe your boss would have expected you to do at your former job. So I think sometimes you have to recognize the fruits of your labor, that you've created this amazing company. Now step back and allow it to provide you an income, because that's why you set it up in the first place, or it's a big reason why you would have set it up.
And how did you manage your work-life balance? Was it a challenge for you, or did you have certain things in place how you could sort of leave work behind and just focus on enjoying yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I can take you through like a typical day in the life of a nomad and like how I would have balanced it with a day. So I would have woken up probably 6 or 7 a.m., something like that, and would have probably gone straight down to the gym in the apartment complex. So a really nice gym there, maybe listened to a podcast, gone for a run. After a session in the gym, gone and used the sauna, gone into the swimming pool, and then back up to the apartment, change, pack the laptop into a backpack, and then jump on one of the electric scooters over to the co-working space. So there's some great co-working spaces around. I'd kind of mix it up and go to like a different one depending on the day of the week usually, because there'd be different people working at each of them. And when I'd get there, I'd always learn something new, because you'd be surrounded by other people who were running e-commerce businesses as well. And there'd always be something like some new Shopify app that they were testing, or some new ad strategy or ad network that they were running ads on, or just something they'd done to improve the conversion rate on their stores that I could learn from. So it was really good environment to be in. You get that great entrepreneurial brain rub from the different people that you meet along the way. And so Becky would also do the same. She would be working on her own business, and we would then meet, maybe we'd work from like 8 till 12, something like that, with a coffee in between. But that's because we were in build mode, right? That wasn't a requirement. That was because I was wanting to really grow the businesses. Then we'd go for lunch after that. So we'd usually meet up somewhere for lunch, try out a new restaurant, maybe do a few personal emails in the afternoon, or run a few errands, or go and pick up the laundry or whatever. And then some days we'd go and use like a 5-star hotel day pass as well. So they had quite a few of those, and you could go and pay something like £20 to access the incredible facilities and like the private beach. If not in Chiang Mai, this would have been more in like Da Nang, but go and access an incredible hotel, use the whole thing for £20 for the day, and then maybe back home, shower, get changed, and head out for dinner at one of the thousands of restaurants in Chiang Mai, or go to an evening co-working meetup with lots of different nomads, and there would be people there talking and giving talks, sharing best practice ideas, things that they'd done. And so yeah, hopefully that gives you a feeling of like how the work day was balanced with other stuff. The actual work part of it was probably between about 8 a.m. till 12, where I was like post coffee, ready to really dive into the business, wanted to build and grow. And then after that, you can work on it as much or as little as you want. I didn't have to do that. I could have probably got away with doing half an hour and just answering a few Slack messages from the team. But when you're growing and building something, I think that's when I would dedicate that kind of time to it.
Yeah, I mean, what a lifestyle you can build for yourself, and you can do that from anywhere. And you could decide to, drop, for a change, you wanted to change from Chiang Mai to Da Nang the next week, and you could just have the same lifestyle. There's no effect on your income from doing that. And that's an amazing position to have built yourself into. And then you can choose how much you do. So when you're in a build phase, which I know I am at the moment, you want to do plenty of work in the day, but still, it's only 4 hours a day, and then you can have the rest of the day to yourself and explore and do some amazing things. So obviously an inspirational lifestyle for a lot of people listening to this today. So how can we give people some practical advice now? So if they want to earn money from anywhere in the world, what are the first sort of things that they need to do in able to start the ball rolling to get to that position?
Well, for me, it was get a really clear goal in mind. So it has to be a vivid picture, a vivid vision of where you want to go. What kind of business do you want to run? And this will help you guide the planning and decision-making process. But none of it matters unless you have a vision board of what you actually want to achieve, where you want to go, what it will look like. So that's why I love the research, because every time I researched a new place, I'd put it on the vision board and be like, that's going to be the life that we build. And then we actually did build it. And then connect with other digital nomads. Make sure you're getting around other like-minded people who can provide with a wealth of practical advice and emotional support. Make sure that you're learning things like Nomad List, for example, is a great place to check out, like, where are other nomads going. And then the next thing is start educating yourself about dropshipping and e-commerce. There are plenty of resources available, including our podcast. You can go and listen to that, or our training programs, which you're welcome to join. Or even a great starting point is my Home Turf Advantage book. So if you head to htabook.com, you could pick up a copy of that there, and that could be the starting point for your journey today. So whatever you do, take action, start your own dropshipping business, learn from your mistakes, and just keep improving as you go, because it might be challenging at first, but the rewards are well worth it once you're on the other side of it. Just a quick heads up, if you'd like to share your questions, stories, successes, or challenges, you can email us directly at podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And you never know, we might even feature you on the next podcast episode.
Also, if you want access to today's show notes or any of the resources we've mentioned in the episode today, then head over to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast. We also have a small favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show so far, you could take a minute to leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice.
You wouldn't believe how much your reviews help us grow the podcast. We'll even read out some of our favourites on the next episode. So if you want to be featured on the show, please do go ahead and leave us a review today. Thanks so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you, and we absolutely love hearing what you think of the podcast.
Now let's answer a question from a listener of the podcast. So remember, if you want your questions answered, then all you need to do is email us. It's podcast@dropshipunlocked.com, and we'll answer your question on an upcoming episode. So that's exactly what Jen has done. So Jen's question is all about managing your time. So she's asked, what are your tips and tricks for time management and managing competing priorities with a growing to-do list?
Yeah, great question, Jen, and I can totally relate to that, especially when you're first starting out with running your own business. It seems that to-do list is never ending. But yeah, prioritizing tasks is going to be crucial to ensuring that you really focus on the most important tasks that are going to move the needle the most for you and your business. So there are a few things that I've found really useful. Now, the first is identify any of these kind of repeatable tasks that don't require a huge amount of thought, but could just be systematized, and then record yourself doing them. Write down the steps, get them into a system like Asana. I think the basic version of it is even free. And then when you are ready to hire a virtual assistant, that's the first thing that gets removed from your plate, because it's the same every day and they can work their way through it. So something like that could be uploading product, dealing with customer questions, issues, complaints, refunds, anything like that. That's something that can go straight to a virtual assistant, and then it's just off your plate. That will free you up so much headspace to think on growing the business. A concept that I use when I've got a lot of competing priorities is by a gentleman called Brian Tracy, and it's a great book called Eat That Frog. And it's the concept of you categorize the to-do list items that you have, your priorities, into A, B, C, and D. And then from your A's, you have your A1, your A2, your A3. And those are the things you tackle on day one. So your A1, 100% of your focus and effort goes to your A1 task. So I've just summarized it briefly there. But if you go through that process, I think you'll find it much easier and much less overwhelming to look at a to-do list, because you'll just pull out what your A1 task is, and you can dedicate all of your brain power just to getting that one thing solved, because that's the thing that will move the needle the most on your business. And so trying to list out your most important goals the night before can be really helpful as well, because then you kind of subconsciously process those things whilst you sleep, and then eventually you start the next day ready to go, hit the ground running. You don't have to think, what am I working on today? You know already what your A1 task is from the night before. And then it's also just about balancing and finding a work-life balance. Once you have been working for a whole day flat out on your A1 task, you're going to want to disconnect your brain at the end of the day. So make sure you have that time to wind down and really disconnect as well.
It really is. And I think something that you've touched on, which is, a great question, Jen. So, thanks, Lewis, for mentioning that you have to be intentional. It's so important that you're intentional with the tasks that you do. And it's so easy to think, I've got this massive to-do list. The first thing I should do is dive straight into it and get the first task ticked off immediately. But actually, we're almost giving you another task. But this is going to be so helpful for you. If you do this before you start any tasks, the first thing you do is actually to plan what's the most important task. You're going to get a lot more leverage over the task that you end up actually completing. So it reminds me of that quote from Abraham Lincoln. And he said, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And I think that will be really helpful for you as well. If you've got your equivalent of a tree to chop down, which is your to-do list, you should spend initially a good proportion of time, 4 hours, working out what task on that to-do list you should be doing in the first place. And for example, your tasks that you're actually doing, if it's chopping down a tree, spend 6 hours creating an SOP for somebody else to chop down the tree for you in the future. 6 hours spent chopping the tree is a lot less effective than 6 hours spent writing an SOP for somebody else to chop the tree down in the future. And then you can infinitely, find more time as you do this over and over again. Something that I use is a simple system, to complete this is something called the 4 Ds. Before you do anything, you should go through this list. So it starts out by looking at a to-do list, and first of all, can you delete anything that's not important and you don't really need to do that task? Then can you defer anything? So anything that's not urgent, can you defer it and put it back to a later date? Then the next D is, can you delegate anything on that task? Can you give it to another team member or somebody else to complete for you? And the final one is to do it yourself. But before you get to the stage of doing any task, think about, can you delete it, defer it, or delegate it first, and then only do the critical tasks that need your attention. Hopefully some tips there for you, Jen, some useful ideas to consider, and for anyone else that's thinking about how to manage the competing priorities that will come at you from all angles. So thank you for your answer there, Lewis. So now let's quickly highlight a listener review that we've had for the podcast. And this review has come in from Sandra. So Sandra, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Sandra said, I'm really enjoying your program. So she must be a member of the Dropship Unlocked program. You are the best. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much for your review, Sandra. We're really glad to hear that you've been enjoying the podcast and that you think we're the best as well. That's very flattering to hear. So thank you very much. Want to make an impact on the podcast? Well, it's surprisingly straightforward to do so. Simply leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, or alternatively, if you are a YouTube enthusiast, then drop us a comment below this video and your review might just be featured on our next episode. And before we sign off today, I'd like to ask a favor of you. Would you consider sharing this episode with a friend? Your entrepreneurial journey in e-commerce could just intrigue a friend or a family member, and by sharing this podcast, it might just start that crucial discussion about how to live life as a digital nomad.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you found the discussion both inspiring and entertaining.
If you're ready to begin your own high-ticket dropshipping journey, then here's what to do next. I've taken all of the years of my own experience, both in running my e-commerce businesses and teaching hundreds of others how to do the same, and I've condensed it all into my book, The Home Turf Advantage. It's your comprehensive guide designed to help you create your own e-commerce business. And you can grab your copy today at htabook.com.
Stay connected by subscribing to the podcast. This way you'll never miss an episode packed with valuable insights. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review. Your feedback motivates us and we love sharing our favourite reviews on future episodes.
And thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We really appreciate you and we look forward to sharing more high-ticket dropshipping insights with you on our next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.